has changed us into a company that searches the world, not just to sell or to source, but to find intellectual capital, the world's best talents and greatest ideas. In connection to globalization, have you ever wondered how globalization affects our economic growth? Like, why other countries are rich and others are poor? Have you ever asked yourself, when did global economics started? I mean, what particular year trading occurs? If you really wanted to know, come and join us as we dig into the history and timeline of global economics.
The speed and volume at which goods and information travel across the world is unprecedented in history. But global exchange itself is older than what we think, reaching back 2,000 years ago along a 5,000-mile stretch known as the Silk Road. The Silk Road wasn't actually a single road, but a network of multiple routes that gradually emerged over centuries, connecting various settlements and to each other thread by thread. Silk is one of the most traded goods in the Silk Road, along with horses, paper, spices, jade, glassware, fur, and slaves. But along with these commodities traded, these routes also enabled the movement of traditions, innovations, ideologies, and languages globally.
Around 1650, the expansion of the slave trade was dramatic throughout this century. It sustained the expansion of Atlantic economy, giving birth to integrated economic systems across the world, with profits accumulating in Europe during the heyday of mercantilism and rise of the Enlightenment.
In 1692, Dutch East India Company, by name of United East India Company, Dutch Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, trading company founded in the Dutch Republic, or the present-day Netherlands. In 1602, to protect the state's trade in the Indian Ocean and to assist in the Dutch War of Independence from Spain. The company prospered through most of the 17th century as the instrument of the powerful Dutch commercial empire in the East Indies, or in the present-day Indonesia. It was dissolved in 1799.
1929, the Great Depression. The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world. With stock markets crashing, unemployment had risen, resulting to poverty and increasing the number of homeless people. On the other hand, consumer debt was escalating, and due to drought, the agricultural sector of the economy was struggling. For those people who are fortunate enough to remain employed, their buying power and wages dropped. Additionally, tax revenue and international trade fell by more than 50%.
World War II brought about ample changes not just to Europe but the entire world. This period marked a cultural and economic shift, and the recovery from that shift echoes to this day. After the war, many countries were devastated both physically and financially, but they rebuilt many outdated structures and developed new technologies that are still used today. The United States benefited the most from World War II as it had a large population, etc. Hence, the US transformed from a mid-level global power to the leader of the free world, and they had to take on new responsibilities, signaling the beginning of the American era.
The IMF was conceived in July 1944 when representatives of 45 countries, meeting in the town of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in the northeastern United States, agreed on a framework for international economic cooperation to be established after the Second World War. They believed that such a framework was necessary to avoid a repetition of the disastrous economic policies that had contributed to the Great Depression. The IMF came into formal existence in December 1945 when its first 29 member countries signed its Articles of Agreement. It began operations on March 1, 1947. Later that year, France became the first country to borrow from the IMF.
On April 15, 1955, in Des Plaines, Illinois, the first McDonald's franchise restaurant was opened by Ray Kroc. The restaurant sells hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries, soft drinks, and milkshakes. The franchise was an immediate success all over United States that by 1958, there were 32 franchises, and by 1960, there were 100, and the rest is history.
During 1960, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, was founded by 5 countries, namely Islamic Republic of Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. It provides developing countries with a mechanism to defend their legitimate interests while strengthening cooperation among oil producers and promoting the stability of petroleum market. OPEC's formation occurred at a time of transition in the international economic and political landscape, with extensive decolonization and birth of many new independent states in the developing world.
On February 8, 1971, the Nasdaq stock market began operations as the world's first electronic stock market. At first, it was merely a quotation system and did not provide a way to perform electronic trades. In 1971, trading began on another stock exchange in America, the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations, or otherwise known as the Nasdaq. In 1992, it joined forces with the International Stock Exchange based in London. The linkage became the first intercontinental securities market.
1973 Oil Crisis. Oil crisis is a sudden rise of oil prices due to the decreased supply, large enough to result to a worldwide recession. It was a turning point of the political mood and endangers economic stability throughout the global economy, for it supplies the main source of energy for advanced industrial economies. In 1973, the Arab members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries proclaimed an oil embargo and agreed to quadruple the price of oil, which caused a decline in the global real gross domestic product. In addition, oil exports to Japan, United States, and Western Europe were prohibited. The embargo was made in retaliation for Western support of Israel during Yom Kippur War. As a result, inflation rises and the global capitalist economy experienced difficulties.
40 years ago, in December 1978, following a decade of the Cultural Revolution led by Mao Zedong that left the communist country in ruins, a series of transformative economic reforms opened China up to the international community and foreign investment. Increased access to foreign music was just one tiny part of China's opening up process that transformed the country from one of the world's poorest nations to the second biggest economy on earth. Chinese people living in poverty dropped from 88% in 1981 to 6% in 2017.
The first contemporary global financial crisis unfolded in the autumn of 1987 on a day known infamously as Black Monday, a chain reaction of market distress and global stock exchanges plummeting in a matter of hours. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, DJIA, dropped 22.6% in a single trading session, a loss that remains the largest one-day stock market decline in history. At that time, it also marked the sharpest market downturn in the United States since the Great Depression.
Born in 1995, but not so young, the World Trade Organization began life on January 1, 1995, but its trading system is half a century older. Since 1948, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or the GATT, had provided the rules for the system. The Second World Trade Organization Ministerial meeting held in Geneva in May 1998 a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the system. It did not take long for the general agreement to give birth to an unofficial de facto international organization, also known informally as GAAT. Over the years, GATT evolved through several rounds of negotiations.
2008 Stock Market Crash. A stock market crash is an abrupt, dramatic decline of stock prices across a major cross-section of a stock market, which results to a significant loss to a paper wealth. In 2008, Lehman Brothers announced bankruptcy. In almost a century, it was the greatest jolt to the global financial system, making the world's banking system fall off drastically. It was a result of defaults on combined mortgage-backed securities. Banks extended loans to people, even to those who weren't creditworthy. Many homeowners defaulted on their loans when the housing market declined. On the other hand, companies who are involved on doing business with these banks were affected negatively.
At present, the coronavirus pandemic has sparked the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression in 1929. Unemployment rates have soared, and countless small businesses are struggling to stay afloat.
Certain industries such as travel and hospitality felt the pandemic's impact most directly. Shops and restaurants closed their doors altogether or opened with low seating capacity and low demand to dine in. Non-essential travel evaporated, causing massive lost revenue not only to airlines and cruise ship operators but also to smaller businesses that rely on tourism.
Although things are slowly beginning to return to normal, it will be a long road ahead before our economy fully recovers.
Oh, we are here again in the present time. So, that's the end of our travelogue, and we hope that you have now seen the bigger picture of economic globalization. This is May Jane Vicuña Ilumba, together with Dannah Amamangpang, Eva Mae Labarda, John Dave Del Monte, Rochelle Wenceslao, and Lyza Mae Damiles.